Hello one and all, and welcome again to Tarot Journeys. Tonight's subject matter is going to be on planetary trumps. Now, there's a lot of people out there that don't like the idea of astrology with tarot, but I think it's an essential ingredient. And once you know your planetary expressions, it's going to bring a great deal of power to your reads. I'm going to start with them not in the celestial body order, but with the horoscope, the house order. We're going to kickstart it with this fella. Now this is the Tower. Now this is in the house of I am, I want, I need. This is the house of starting. This is the aggressive, dynamic. This is the one with the fuel and the fire and the gusto and the fury. This is the you. Now this card, this planet, Mars, rules Aries and it rules Scorpio. I'm using death here as Scorpio. Now, when Mars rules Aries, it is the overtly aggressive planet. When it rules Scorpio, it is a covertly aggressive planet. So here we have a planet that rules a water and a fire. Now, each planet in general rules two houses, the positive and the negative aspect. I'll explain that in another video. The next planetary trump is this one, and it's Venus. Now this rules Taurus and Libra. Now there are two sides to Venus. There's the Taurus side, which is earthy, desirable, basic, and then you have the Libra, which is eloquence, balance, poise, grace, social endeavours. So there are two sides to this card, and this card, Venus, whenever there are other cards around it, will give a clue as to what is being desired and whether it's obtainable or not. This next card, the Magician, is Mercury. Now Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. Now again, it has two sides. It has the Geminian of outgoing, interested in everything, expansive, curious. The Virgo is discerning, analytical, critical, diligent, taskmaster. So there are two sides for this ruling planet depending on the houses that it rules. The next planetary trump is the Moon. Now, the Moon is not depicted by the Moon in Tarot. The High Priestess is the depiction of the Moon. The Moon rules Pisces. Now, to say this card is important is a very big understatement. This card is responsible for tides, for rain excess, for drought, for emotions, for inner thoughts, for cyclical things on earth, such as growth, plantation. This is a very important card, and it gives a clue to the inner functioning that's happening around a spread. So the Moon, the High Priestess, very, very important. It is also the feminine. This is the masculine. This is obviously the Sun. This is of self. This is the I am. This is Exalts in Aries. These are friends. This is the self, the creative self, but the self. This is the projection of the inner. This is the male, and this is the complement feminine. So this is a planet of application. We have next Scorpio. Now Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, as I've said before, and this fella. Now Scorpio is about intensity, the desire on a collective basis, an interest in the occult, if you like, the hidden, the underworld. This is what the planet Pluto is about, as well as renewal, destruction and renewal. So the next planet that we move on to rules Sagittarius and Pisces. Now Jupiter is a planet of expansion, joviality, of philosophy, long distance travel over land or over sea. Now Jupiter rules Pisces, we'll get to that in a minute, but this is a planet that when it comes in, this is a year-long planet into a sign, so it affects each sign on a yearly basis. This is more of a collective. Then we have Saturn. Now Saturn, I'm going to use the Aeon card because I agree with the authoress of the book I'm about to show you in a second. This is known as Judgment in other packs, but this is the Aeon. This is the Sat card of Saturn. I would term this as Saturn. It's a fire card, but it's Saturn. And this is great change comes about. Now with Saturn is limitation. Saturn also rules Aquarius. This is the planet Uranus, which co-rules Aquarius. Now, jump in Saturn a bit. If you have a Saturnian Aquarian, they are likely to be more serious than a Uranian Aquarian. Now, what I mean by this is that they'll be thinking outside the box, but there'll be a certain amount of restriction and control from a Saturnian influence. Without the Saturnian and more of the Uranian influence, there will be avant-garde, coming at things from an unusual, bizarre angle, that kind of thing. So we have Saturn, we have Uranus, and then we're back to Neptune. Now, Neptune rules Pisces as well as Jupiter. Now, Jupiter's rule of Pisces is inner reflection, is of learning without bodily movement necessarily, of studious mind, of adversity through a trapped physical being, if you like, the learning of something or other, spiritual usually, but lessons to be learned from a trappedness of a physical embodiment. Neptune is of bewilderment, dissolving, illusion, something that is non-tangible. Neptune is a card that is creative without form necessarily, but it has ideas. Incidentally, Neptune that rules Pisces can make people prone to excessive drug taking, or you have to watch a measurement of drugs for a Piscean because they can easily overdose. So Neptune is a planet of non-tangibility, but important nonetheless. Now, each of these planets has an expression to make, or expressions, and they have their own traits. Be it whatever sign, their traits hold to the house rules. So if you learn the exaltation of a planet, the ruler of the planet, the detriment of the planet, and the fall of the planet, then you will start to understand its workings with other cards near it according to the other cards, whether this card is in detriment, whether it's in fall, whether it's comfy, whether it's uncomfortable. Will generally the expression of its energies in an uncomfortable situation will not only be weak, but can be adverse, and this even goes for the sun in certain aspected things. Now, when I was learning tarot, you never stop learning, of course, but when I was avidly learning first off, I learnt all the major trumps by rote. Now, to me, this nearly killed me. This was now in retrospection the wrong way round. I should have learnt the planetary trumps first, because then you start seeing the marrying up of the other trumps through the personalities of the planets, their affinities that are shared. Now I'll give you an example of this. The Emperor, which is Aries, when these two cards are together, this is a boosting or a destruction of ego, ready for a new self. But these two go together very well. In actual fact, the Emperor has a lot of control over such a devastating card. Now, you have therefore the traits of the Emperor: dynamic, cardinal, go-getting, warrior type. This goes with the Tower. With Venus, you have Taurus and Libra. The earthy side of Taurus with the balance of Libra, so that you know when you're looking at Venus, then these two cards, and especially if they're in the vicinity of, are very cozy together. Also, Mercury. Now, Mercury's cards, this is the card of Gemini. So Gemini is a transitory communication. Siblings, short journeys, next door neighbours. So when you have these two cards with Mercury, because Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. Now in Gemini, Mercury is full of ideas, expansive, creative, avant-garde. In Virgo, he's detailed, analytical, critical, absolutely to the fore, protocol, determination. This is a sort of card under Virgo that will study symphonies just as a snack. So there you have two meanings of the two houses by one planet. Now the moon only rules Cancer, which is Imon Coli. Now the card trump for Cancer is this, the Chariot. Now the Cancer is about home, it's about genealogy, it's about your inheritance, it's about how you are and your base of yourself. This is the representation, the Chariot, and what it is, it's an emotional control. It's the ability to succeed with emotional control. So therefore, by looking at this card, using the traits of this card, you know immediately that there is a connection. Now we have the Sun, Leo. The Sun is the self. It's the creative self. It's the expression of self. It is all the things that you've learnt up to Leo, from house 1 to house 5, to put into order. Now, house 5 is Leo. This is self-expression, creativity. This is expressing your own self. Now, the polar opposite to this card is this card. Now, this is an expression of self. This is an expression of a collective, of an audience, of a club, of an audience of any sort. This is to do with self-expression. So if you self-expressed with this, you'd be self-expressing to, say, an audience. So therefore the self would be part of the whole. Now, because this is the polar opposite, the Sun would be in detriment in Aquarius, where it rules Leo. It is not comfortable in Aquarius. Now, I've got lost here for a second, but where am I? Oh yes, Neptune. Neptune, as I've said, rules Pisces as well as Jupiter. Now we've gone through the Neptunian part, but this is to do with Pisces, so that immediately you look at Neptune, then you can think of Pisces, of a dream state, of a detachment, of looking away from something to look at something. These are the traits of Neptune. If this falls in a spread, then you know that things are to be reflected on, either in a dream state, a creative state, or whatever. But this is a card of non-tangibility. In some ways, it's like the Fool. So the planetary trumps are a very important way to get to know your majors. This is the card of Sagittarius. So when you see this card, you immediately think of Jupiter. Now this would be travel by land in particular. If it's the Piscean Jupiter, then it will be travelled by water. Now, because it is a card of Sagittarius and Pisces, it's an expansive card. So you have an expansive mind, expansive learning. So when you see this, you know that this is to do with Jupiter and Neptune. The Devil, Saturn. This is to do with the Aeon. You know that when you see this card, limitations and restrictions are abounding. This is about mastery before you achieve. This is about learning maturity. Saturn does not tolerate immaturity, foolishness. It wants progression on a slow but sure scale. The other card of Saturn is the Earth card that we have here, or in this case in Crowley's deck, the Universe. I'll just quickly do this. This is attributed to Air the Fool, so this would go very nicely with Uranus. Now when these trumps, this is also while I'm here, the Moon, that's Pisces. So the nearer these trumps are to the planets that they're fey with, the more their own traits are going to be amplified. So if you had the Moon with the Chariot, then you know that this is a very comfortable card together. In actual fact, they're both water cards anyway, so you know it's very comfortable. If you had Leo with the Sun, you know that that is magnifying the self. You know that that's magnifying. If you had the feminine deity of the priestess, the Moon, with Venus, you know that this is a feminine outcome. You know that this is an amplification of femininity, because this is of beauty and fecundity, and this is of spiritual intent, of unconscious thinking. So therefore these two together are very comfortable. Now, positions in a spread. If you have the Moon at the bottom of a Celtic cross, say, then it's in a very comfortable locational position because it's a homely card. If you have the Chariot, I mean, this is very nice as an outcome card, but if you have the Chariot in the home position, that too is fate with this card. So that is a good position. If you have the Sun in the first position and you had this fellow with it, then this is a very good combination. So you can have combinations with planetary trumps. And I learnt a lot more with planetary trump learning first, and then looking at the major trumps after that. Now, there's a fellow at the moment doing astrological teaching, and it's of birth charts, and I found this very, very useful, and he teaches very well, and it's concise teaching, and it's quite easy to understand teaching, and it is Nemus at astropsychology.co.uk. So give him a look. He's doing a session of natal chart readings, several of them, and they're free, and you can't beat free. The attribution I was talking about to the card of Saturn, my agreement comes with this woman, Elizabeth Hazel. Now this book, don't know whether you got it right there, is called Tarot Decoded, and it's by Elizabeth Hazel. It is astrologically bound. She's a tarosophist, but she's a fearsome astrologist as well. And her reads are along the lines of elemental structures with astrological intent, which is not really my bag, but having said that, there was so much I learnt on planetary trumps and the application of positions through major trumps in spreads, especially horoscope spreads. So I highly recommend this Elizabeth Hazel and Tarot Decoded. Buy it. It is something really worth buying. So what I'm saying is, to boost your spread a knowledge of your spreads, if you learn the planetary trumps, not only will you have an idea of how the other trumps function according to the expression from the planet, but you will also have an idea of the spread movement, whether it's going to be done at a quick pace, whether things are going to pan out at a slow pace, from your inner planets, Mars, Venus, and the Moon, or whether they're going to play out over a period of time from Saturn, Jupiter onwards. Venus is included on the inner planets as well. So if you have a preponderance of one or a preponderance of another, you immediately know that things are going to take a time, or they will go very quickly, or the time sequences will be quick. So what you can glean from planetary trumps alone is enormous. And I wished that I'd have done the planetary trumps and learnt those first, and then I would have learnt the attributions of the other major trumps a lot quicker than going rote, going the Fool, going the Magician, going the High Priestess, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. Now, I'm not decrying that way of teaching. It just didn't work for me. And I found myself pulling my hair out. But there you go. I dug deep, and it was unnecessary. And I hope this has been of some help to you. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Any questions, please email me or leave comments, nice ones. And until then, I'm going to leave you with my usual thought, and that is, out of nothing we came, out of nothing we shall return. This has been John. Thanks for listening.